I have the Vice President of Advancing American Freedom, Paul Teller, with me, and we're going to talk about the attacks at the Israeli embassy, which I'm still really mad about. Good morning, Paul. How are you?
Hey, morning. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you being here because this didn't get enough media attention. They sort of brought it up and then they just moved over it like, we're more worried about Harvard and them getting a standing ovation about their international students. They're spending more time on that than they are about these two beautiful young people who wanted to start their lives together.
It's a really good point. In fact, as I was driving into the office downtown D.C. here today, I just was, doing a quick internet search, knowing that your interview was coming up. Like, let me see what the latest is. Just checking the latest details. Everything online was from 6 days ago, 7 days ago. Yep. You're exactly right. There's been no media update at all. So you're to be commended for even bringing this topic up and still realizing this is an important thing. Myself personally, I'm a Jewish American, also happen to be politically conservative American, which is another category of person who's been targeted here in the D.C. area. So conservative and Jew, not a great combo, but I'm hanging in there, and we're just going to fight onward every day.
Some of my best friends are Jewish, so I appreciate that. I heard this story. I believe the girl wasn't even a Jew. She was marrying a Jew. And they were going to get engaged, and they were so excited. They were going to start their life together. They're at the Israeli embassy, and some guy who supports Hamas just decided to kill them, just slaughter them.
And did it at the Capitol Jewish Museum, which is downtown D.C. There was, I think, apparently a young diplomats event. So there were other diplomats there from different embassies, different countries, that kind of thing. And like you said, young couple. Apparently, they had already bought the engagement ring, so they knew they were getting married. It wasn't even a surprise, one to the other. It was something they were going to do together, I think, soon, and just terrific. I mean, obviously, it's put not only the Israeli embassy staff, on lockdown. I was actually just talking to one this morning, but other embassy staff around the region, just Jews, in general around the region, synagogues, and just just working anywhere where they're known to be Jews, like Israel advocacy organizations and other things, are just are real on edge because who's to say this was a lone actor? Maybe he had a group behind her, or maybe he'll inspire others to do horrible things like that. So,
a lot of stupid people out there. Here's the thing. They keep talking about humanitarian aid finally getting to the Palestinians. I'm like, that crap was coming in the entire time. Hamas was just taking it to feed their soldiers and do whatever they were doing. The people who are suffering are the people who have been in custody of Hamas, and half of them dead, I'm sure. But the other ones being brutally treated, barely getting any food. The stories that are coming out of the people who were finally released are beyond our wildest dreams. It was a living hell. Now, these two were slaughtered in broad daylight, and we can't get the news to stay on it, but if this had been a Muslim, this would have been a 24-hour news cycle because America's so hateful. And they keep talking about the dead Palestinian children and this and this. I don't like that children die. I don't like that.
That's right.
They keep saying, and they're not part of Hamas. They are just the people who live there. They have pictures of martyrs on the wall and bombs under their kids' beds.
Yeah.
So...
No, that's right. That's right. And that's the thing, too, is I know it's sometimes hard to dive into the details of a murder, but if your listeners even just do a quick Google search for 30 seconds, the details that come up, apparently this guy, it wasn't one quick shot of each, which of course is horrible enough. He apparently shot them. They were already down. He stood over them, kept shooting them in the back at close range, and just to make sure, the woman that reportedly was trying to crawl away, to save her life. I mean, just disgusting, horrible details. And the good news is the Justice Department has said they are they have already filed capital murder charges, and they're going to find out who this guy is, go after him, and pursue the top possible justice that this guy can get.
Firing squad.
That's good news.
Firing squad. That's what he deserves. That's what he did. I think you should die the way you take a life. Whatever it is.
Yeah, right. Whoever is justifying him breathing another breath, I'd love to hear that logic. Of course, you see across the internet, right, folks that are cheering this guy on the way they cheered on the guy who killed the insurance executive in New York City. I mean, for some reason, to some people, killers are heroes, especially killers of the 100% innocent. In other words,
right.
It wasn't like this couple was coming after this guy. In fact, just the opposite from what I understand. This couple was actually even kind of pro-Palestinian for Israeli Jews. So, I mean, he really, talk about targeting the wrong people. It's unbelievable.
They don't care. All you have to have is the name Jew in front of your name. That's all you have to have. And the anti-Semitism, I've been forcing my 9-year-old grandson who stays with me to watch movies about World War II and Auschwitz and Schindler's List and all of these. And he gets really mad at me when I say you have to watch these. But then when we're done, he looks at me with tears in his eyes and he's like, thank you so much for showing me that. Because they don't teach it the way it happened. They don't talk about the brutality and the starvation and the hatred and the absolute unnecessary killing that went on with these wars. And it looks like anti-Semitism is the new makeup trend. It's like everybody's trying to do it.
Yeah, it's very in vogue on the left, no question. In fact, you really can't be pro-Jew like openly on the left. I mean, to stand up and say, I like Jewish people or I like Israel, try that in any left-wing gathering. You'll be escorted and booed out of the room. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Can you help me understand how Hollywood people who are Jewish are still Democrats?
Yeah, I wish I understood.
Make that one make sense. Where are you, Babs? Yeah, where are you, Babs? Come on.
Yeah.
So, Paul, with this happening, and obviously, I knew it hadn't been talked about. That's why I brought it up. But I'm just saying, why do you think that is?
I hate to say it. I think a lot of people, sometimes even some pro-Israel people, are starting to get immune to it because it happens, right? I mean, Jews being targeted, either successfully or unsuccessfully, does happen so often that I guess, I hate to say it, it almost is a dime a dozen to some people, right? And they just feel like it's no longer news, right? It was news that day. Wow, that's breaking news. And then unless there's some sort of legal development about what they find out about the killer or what charges, additional charges, that kind of thing, or sentencing or whatever, I guess they feel like it's not news, even though there is still stuff going on. Again, I communicated with an Israeli embassy staffer just this morning. It was, I won't repeat stuff he said in private, but basically they're on lockdown there like never before. And you can imagine there was already tremendous security at the Israeli embassy. And now, it's not only at the embassy, but where any embassy staff go around the city, the security they're going to have and do, and precautions they'll take. I mean, it's unfortunate and tragic. They have to live that way, and many of us have to live that way.
Yeah, well, maybe we should ask Ilhan Omar what she thinks about this. Was it a tragedy or was this a good thing? Because I want to know what she'd say. Because she runs her mouth just like, what's her face, Crockett and AOC and everybody else talking about attack. Maxine Waters is just as bad. They're all, even the governor of Illinois, Pritzker, is like, be brutal, go after them, make them uncomfortable, do this, do that. I'm paraphrasing, but it's like they can call for violence, but Trump is accused of January 6 events, even though he didn't say anything about attacking the Capitol. There's such a double standard here.
Yeah, there's no question that violence against Jews for many on the left is acceptable. It's acceptable speech. They call it free speech. It's acceptable form of protest. It's totally fine. Apparently all Jews are responsible for, every bullet fired in the direction of a non-Jew, especially a Muslim, right? I mean, it's just really incredible.
And the Hasidic Jews better get off their butts over in Israel and do something to help because they are going to be next. They are not off limits. But I was speaking to a soldier who was heading into battle in Rafah, and he was on a satellite phone and he had to go because they were literally getting on the truck to go back into battle. And I read his book about his experience with it, but he said that all of them are so very, very careful to not attack and hurt civilians. They're very, very careful. But then they're playing with these whack-a-mole Palestinians who are jumping up, shooting with no discretion whatsoever. They don't care who they hit. And they're fighting this enemy who just hates life. I don't even know how to explain it.
Yeah, well, and you described it perfectly before when you were mentioning that, it's a way of life there to deliberately put your family, including young people, in harm's way. It's like, if they know there's going to be an attack in a certain area, trying to go after Hamas, they'll deliberately put civilians and kids in there, or they'll hide, like you said, weapon stashes underneath schools, underneath private homes, deliberately hoping that civilians get targeted just for the public relations effect of that. I mean, just unbelievable. No respect for life at all. You're exactly right.
They'll hold babies so that you can't shoot at them. That's what they do. They won't let the people get out of the school if they know that Israeli bombs are coming, because they want the news to say that Israel killed a bunch of people in a school. That's what they want. You know, and then the fake news that Ilhan Omar spread saying, oh, they bombed a hospital. No, they didn't. It didn't even happen. And it made national news. So I bring all this up to just talk about the divide where they constantly beat the drum of the casualties for the Palestinians, and they keep leaving out the 1,000 civilians who were in the kibbutz the night they decided to go in and just massacre them, burn babies, cut parents' heads off in front of their children, and give them nightmares for if they let them live for the rest of their lives. So this killing at the Israeli embassy is just too close to home for me, and this needs to be handled with a death grip.
Yeah, no question. And like you said, it should be constant news. There should be constant updates. Anytime we learn even the tiniest little detail about the killer, that should be news, that kind of thing. Because otherwise, it's not even just Jews that can't feel safe. It's anyone who supports Israel, which is a lot of Christian folks, thank God. So
I'm proud. I think I'm going to hang a Jewish flag in my yard today.
Love it.
I'm so over it. I'm done with it, and I will unapologetically support Israel at all times, because it's in the Bible that if I don't, I'm not a friend of God. And I am going to support Israel to my last breath. So,
Amen. And by the way, as a Jewish American, I just want to say thank you for that. And there's so many just believing Christians out there who defend us with their last breath, and sometimes defend us better than we Jews defend ourselves, to be honest.
Wow.
Which I was just so thankful for you. So we're really, really very grateful.
Oh, you're welcome. And I've got a big mouth. I'm not afraid to use it. And I will definitely speak out on behalf of Israel and the Jewish people for as long as God allows me to. But those innocent Israelis, the day that happened, I felt a hatred in my heart that I have not felt in a very, very long time. And I'm still working on that. I need to get that out of my heart. But it was just extremely unnecessary. And they're like, well, Israel keeps lobbing bombs. I'm like, they're firing back at you. Yeah. Let's cover the whole story. But as long as they have the national news media, you can't win over a lot of people in America who are brainwashed and think everything's a conspiracy theory unless it came from ABC.
Yeah, right. That's right. And the notion that these two, practically kids, right? I mean, from my perspective, middle-aged, these are kids. They're babies, right, practically, that they had anything to do with
anything.
With anything in Hamas. I mean, right, these were diplomatic staff probably writing memos and emails, in an office in Washington, D.C., and just the notion that they're somehow responsible and therefore that their lives deserve to be taken from them. I mean, just outrageous. Anyone who could justify that is just a horrible human being.
It's racism, and that's what it is. Let's call it what it is. Maybe we should put up a statue like they did for George Floyd of these two in front of the building. Maybe we should do that. Anyway, tell people what Advancing American Freedom is, Mr. Paul, please.
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, again, privileged to be Executive Vice President, Advancing American Freedom. You can find us on X or Twitter at American Freedom, and it's basically the issue advocacy organization founded by former Vice President Mike Pence, speaking of people who are strongly pro-Jew, strongly pro-Israel. And we just advance a traditional conservative agenda across all issues, all the time, in Washington, around the country, around the conservative movement, and we'd just love to connect with you.
Yeah, and I really, really hope Trump keeps his promise and goes in there and wipes them out. I don't care if he leaves it in rubble. It can be rebuilt as long as they're gone. Paul Teller,
has to happen.
Executive Vice President, Advancing American Freedom, thank you for your time today, sir, and God bless Israel and America.
Appreciate you so much. We'll talk soon.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.